To repair your Samsung Galaxy S Advance, you will need a small Phillips and bladed screwdriver, and if the screen isn't shattered you can use a socket tool. This is from a phone windscreen mount. You could use a sat-nav or possibly a fridge one. You might also need a separation tool like a guitar pick or a plastic knife. You might also need some double-sided mobile phone tape. This is extremely sticky and flexible compared to normal household tape. To help soften the adhesive, you'll need to use some heat. This is a hot air heat gun. You could use a fan heater or a hairdryer. If you can, make sure the device is fully shut down. Then remove the battery cover, battery, and make sure you take out your SIM and micro SD card. Using your small Phillips, undo these 6 screws on the back. These are all the same size, so don't worry about getting them mixed up. You can skip any stage by clicking the link at the top of the video. Now, using your thumbnail or a thin plastic tool, we need to release the clips around the outside edge, which I've marked in white. Starting at the bottom, work your way around the outside edge. And if you haven't got a thumbnail, you can use a plastic tool. Once you've released all the clips, you can lift the rear housing away. This contact at the top is for your GPS antenna, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and a moisture indicator. If you are replacing the rear housing, you'll need to remove this 3G GSM antenna and then switch that over to your new case. Be careful not to lose this rubber gasket. If you need to replace the loudspeaker, then disconnect this flex cable. And there's a small amount of double-sided adhesive holding this on. Gently lift that up. And then you can fit your replacement. If you need to replace your SIM and micro SD tray, or you're having trouble with the headphone socket, main microphone or micro USB port, gently and carefully disconnect this flex cable. This is for the 3G GSM antenna, and the same at this end. Gently lift it and disconnect. Now we need to lift the volume switch. Carefully lift and try and keep the double-sided adhesive on the back of the switch. Let's come around to the other side. And you can use a little bit of heat to soften the adhesive to make this a little bit easier. So flatten the tape down if it's lifted up. And the same again on the power switch. Just carefully lift that from the casing, and try and keep the double tape on the back of the switch. Now disconnect the main screen flex cable and disconnect the front camera and proximity sensor. And now undo this single screw at the top. This is the same size as the others. And before you can lift the main board away, we need to unplug this flex cable for the USB socket. So using the screwdriver, just twist and lift the board up. And now you can lift the main board away. To replace the SIM and SD tray, start by disconnecting the flex cable on this side. Using a thin blade or a screwdriver, you can lift the SIM and SD tray away. You can use some heat to soften the adhesive, which makes this a little easier. Before you put your replacement back on, make sure the adhesive is sitting down nice and flat. When you fit the replacement, make sure you line up these metal clips with the cutout in the SIM tray. And there's two small pins to line up here and here. Don't push too hard or you might bend the metal tray. Reconnect your flex cable and you can assemble from this point. To replace the camera, disconnect and then fit your replacement. This contact is for the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and this one's for your GPS antenna. To remove the USB flex assembly, we need to release this flex cable. Start at the bottom and lift this vinyl tape away from the casing. You can use some heat to make this a little bit easier. Don't pull it too quickly, otherwise you'll tear where the joins are. Now you can lift the flex cable away. And put the vinyl tape back down. This can be a little bit tricky. We need to lift the touch keys away from the screen. As you lift this away, you'll see the touch key is stuck on this board and the screen. Again, you can use some heat to soften the adhesive. And once you've got this lifted slightly away, you need to try and lift the touch key away from the screen. If you're replacing this, then don't worry too much about any damage. But if you're removing this to replace the screen, then you need to be very careful, otherwise you can tear the ribbon and you'll need to replace it. If you have a new flex assembly, these touch keys will be open pointing out towards the sides. So it'll look like this. You'll need to remove this silicone microphone gasket and transfer that over to your new flex assembly. It's a little bit tricky. Just keep moving it around until it sits all the way down onto the microphone. Now we can remove the earpiece, proximity and front facing camera. Gently lift the flex cable up and the camera comes out nice and easy. There's a small amount of double-sided tape holding this in. This is the infrared LED, ambient light sensor and proximity sensor and your forward-facing camera. Now we can remove the earpiece. Small amount of adhesive holding this on. And finally, the vibrating motor. And put that aside. Remove the antenna flex cable and make sure you remove the home key. Now we need to get this nice and hot to soften the adhesive and then separate the screen from the frame using the thin plastic tool or a thin blade. And if the screen isn't shattered, you can attach a sucker tool, which makes it a little bit easier to remove the screen. Now switch on your hot air. Try and get the temperature to around about 60 to 70 C. Put some gloves on so you don't burn your hands. And once the screen's nice and warm, try and lift the screen away from the frame. And if you're replacing the screen, it doesn't matter if you do any damage to the glass, so you could use a metal blade instead of a plastic tool. Here I'm trying to preserve the double-sided adhesive so I won't have to replace it, and I'm also trying to keep the screen in good condition. Just keep working your way around the outside edges, and if you take your time you'll be able to reuse the double-sided tape, which will save a lot of time and effort putting fresh tape on. If you don't have access to the double-sided mobile phone tape, you could use a silicone-based adhesive which will hold it in place and also let you separate it in the future if you need to replace the screen again. If you don't have a sucker tool, then keep twisting and levering the glass away from the frame. Keep it nice and hot, and you'll see the adhesive is nice and soft. The frame is starting to lift away. If this screen was broken, I would be using a lot more force and would have separated the screen and frame already by now. I'm just taking my time and gradually lifting that screen away. And you don't need to worry about any flex cables at the bottom, as we took them out earlier. Now we can switch off the hot air. And this would normally be your broken screen. As I want to reuse this, I'm just repositioning the double-sided tape. Your new screen should come with this double tape already applied and a protective film on the back of it. Because I used heat and took the glass away nice and slowly, we're able to reuse this double-sided adhesive. This will save a lot of time from placing new tape onto the case. Make sure the adhesive is sitting down nice and flat all the way around the outside. And it's quite important around here, otherwise dust gets between the screen and the front camera. If you cannot reuse the existing double-sided tape, then apply fresh tape to the top and the bottom, and make sure you cut holes around the sensors at the top and the keys at the bottom. Now take your replacement screen, peel off the protective film, and place the ribbon cable through into the metal frame. Make sure the screen sits down all the way and the speaker grill lines up, and the home key, and check all the way around the edge, make sure it's sitting down nice and flat. Once you're happy that's sitting down nicely, we can reassemble. Place the vibrating module into its hole. Make sure those contacts are pushed down nicely. Now replace the earpiece. And make sure the flex cable is pushed all the way down. And that's sitting all the way in. Now replace the front-facing camera and proximity sensor. Make sure the proximity sensor is pushed all the way up against the screen, as if there's an air gap there, the screen will go blank during voice calls. Make sure this hole lines up with the pin on the case. And bend this flex cable back so it stands straight up. Now we need to replace the USB flex cable. Lift this vinyl cover up again. And before you place the flex cable in, make sure you replace the home key. This will only go in the correct way around. And loosely offer the flex cable in place. This can be a little bit tricky. Need to bring these touch keys around and get them to locate into the casing. If it's a new one, you may have to remove some protective film from the keys. You see that's gone all the way down. Make sure that's pushed all the way home and it's sitting down nicely. Now push the flex cable down into place and bring the vinyl cover back over. You may need to lift this again if you have trouble getting the main board to sit down onto the connector. Now we can replace the main board. Hold it around this way, and as you offer it into place, make sure none of the cables are trapped on both sides. And before we push it down, we need to put the antenna flex cable underneath this corner. Make sure it goes underneath the circuit board, and then keep moving it around and pushing down gently until you feel it push into place. If the USB flex connector is not perfectly lined up, you might have some trouble getting the main board to snap down into place. If this happens, lift up the vinyl and move the flex cable about until it lines up and the main board snaps down. Now line up this antenna cable and make sure that pushes all the way down, and make sure the antenna cable is pushed all the way into the case so it doesn't get pinched by the rear cover. Now reconnect the front camera and proximity sensor and the main screen connector. Replace that single screw up the top. And now push the power switch back into place. Make sure it lines up with the case. And make sure it's fully pushed down. Same with the volume switches. And give it a gentle push down. Now we can replace the loudspeaker. A final check to make sure everything's sitting down nicely. And then we can replace the rear housing. Starting from the USB port at the bottom. Squeeze it together. Before you replace the battery, make sure you put your SIM and micro SD card back in. And switch it on. And while that's booting, we can replace the screws. Then replace the battery cover. And you now have a fully repaired Galaxy S Advance. You can check all the functions are working correctly by entering the code *#0* *##. And you can test for dead pixels on your screen and test your earpiece. The vibrator. Your main camera. This will test your ambient light sensor is working. So when you cover it up, the levels go lower. This is a self-test for the gyroscope. And this is for the compass. When I first tried this touch test, the bottom line wouldn't work. But since I've done this touch test, the bottom line is working okay now. So this might help with touchscreen calibration. This will check all the sub keys are working okay, including the power and the volume switches. And finally, this will test the front camera is working okay. If you would like to be notified when I upload my next video, make sure you subscribe. And if you found this video useful, please give me the thumbs up. Thanks for watching.